Welcome to the Thoughtful Software Podcast. On this show, your hosts, Fahad and Andrew, discuss emerging technologies, interview industry experts, and share their insights on how to build incredible software. Ultimately, thoughtful software is all about helping people be better at what they do. We believe thoughtful people and thoughtful software can change the world for the better. Join our Insights newsletter at skiplist.com to be the first to receive our latest podcasts and in-house articles. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. What does it take to be a good CTO? It's important for every organization to understand what it means to be a good technology leader. Whether you are the CIO, CTO, CSO, or CDO, you own the technology at your company. In this episode, Andrew and Fahad are diving into what it means to be a great CTO, misconceptions in the industry, and sharing more helpful information on how to best work with the CTO in your organization. So get excited. This is a jam-packed episode, so let's get into it.
All right, Andrew, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. So today we're going to talk about how to be a great CTO. This is a good topic because I routinely offer your services as a CTO for pretty much everyone I talk to. So I think it'd be good to understand why, what is it? What does it mean to be a good CTO? And we'll have a nice conversation around it because I think it's very important for every organization to understand, what it means to be a good technology leader. And we'll just kind of chat about that and, kind of see where maybe there's some, we'll discuss things around career trajectory and, what developers could do and how important a CTO is to an organization. Does that sound fair?
I think it sounds terrific.
So I think one of the things maybe we can get started on and just talk about some of the differences between a lot of the different, I think, technology leadership roles. So we have CTO, Chief Technology Officer, CIOs, Chief Innovation Officer, and Chief Information Officer, CDO, Chief Digital Officer, and what did you say? Chief Development
Officer, but it could also be Chief Data Officer too, if your organization has
Data
one of those.
Officer. CSO, right? There's Chief Security Officer,
Yep.
I believe. Okay, there's so many.
Yeah.
So let's just put all the other ones aside and describe what is a CTO to you and, why they're so important to an organization.
Yeah, I think first I'll cover those titles. And really, it's what's important to you as an organization. And that's usually the person you have. And you usually have multiple people depending on the size of your organization. So it's not uncommon to have a chief information officer with a CTO or a CTO with a chief information officer not reporting to each other. Just depending on how you structure your organization and what you value as an organization will tell you, what you should have and what you shouldn't have. As for what a CTO is, in my opinion, they own technology at a company. Now, I think there's two things people need to understand about that statement. The first is all the systems that exist in a company, while they are technology, may not be under the purview of the CTO. And what that means is that, if you have a phone system, you have off-the-shelf products that are helping sales, marketing, HR, the operations of a business. Those tend to belong to IT because they can be administered that way. What I mean by technology, I mean the systems that help operate the core of the business. And so oftentimes a company, if it's selling technology products, the CTO oversees the roadmap and vision for those technology products, but also may oversee the internal way the company operates via technology. It's a subtle difference, to be sure. And oftentimes you see in organizations where there's a CIO at the top of the org chart when it comes to technology, they own all of that. So it can be a lot of different things, but usually the CTO underneath that person owns the vision of how that technology operates and how people are going to utilize that technology together to do their jobs.
So why is this so important now? I've seen a lot more companies emphasize a CTO role, even from an early startup stage. Why is this so critical to have somebody in this role?
Every business in 2019 is a digital slash technology business. You can't avoid it. If you are not using software in 2019, you will not be around in 2021 or 2022 because your competitors will kill you, right? And that sounds like a bold statement, but we've seen it. Amazon is killing retailers left and right. Why? Because they're a technology firm and the other firms didn't adopt technology. Best Buy is still alive because they fundamentally adopted technology. And when they adopt technology, they need a vision, they need a roadmap, they need someone to guide how it's going to work at that business. And so you see the birth of chief technology officers. Chief information officers have been around for a little longer because people have had information systems, databases, phone systems, and all of that. But it's not until fairly recently that people have started adopting custom technology as a competitive strategy in the market.
Well, let's talk about what are some of the misconceptions about what is a CTO. And it could be just anything around, like you've mentioned, vision, owning the technology. What are some of the things that people misunderstand about a CTO?
The first is when you're a CTO, you have to be a CTO for everybody. And what I mean that is that's just about technology. It's understanding the business itself, how the business operates. So that's understanding marketing, sales, HR, knowing how everything interacts so that you can deploy an effective technology strategy. And it can be very frustrating because it's less about technology and more about people. I think the second thing people get wrong is exactly what I said, but stated a different way, which is it's about bridging the gap. Yes, your name is Chief Technology Officer. You own technology, but you also own bridging the gap between technology and business. And so when people don't quite see how technology can help, you're there to help them and explain technology in a human, understandable way to them to say, this is how it could help. This is how we could transform this, how we could be more competitive. And a lot of CTOs don't really interject themselves in those conversations. Instead, they stand back and they have direction dictated to them instead of owning, that gap and helping the business understands what technology can do. And I think the last thing is understanding that they ultimately own business enablement, right? Before, business enablement could have been given to people from multiple directions. You could have sales enablement, marketing enablement, but in 2019, business enablement is technology. And so you really own that and how technology is deployed at your business, why it's deployed, and the manner it's deployed, and how it integrates with the other parts of the ecosystem within your business.
That's interesting. So you started out as a developer many years ago and eventually became a CTO. What was it about your skill set and, kind of just what you just said about understanding the both business and technology? Like, what did you learn along the way that naturally led you to become a CTO eventually?
Yeah, so I've always had a knack for business. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I've always read all the business books that I could. Innovator's Dilemma, Crossing the Chasm. I really wanted to understand how business operated. It was always fascinating to me. On the other side, I have a deep passion for technology, and I always loved building things. And software was something I could build and deploy. I could build something that people could use within a couple hours, and I'm off to the races. I get the instant gratification because I'm also an impatient person of being able to immediately build something. And if you're an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer, you don't get the same kind of immediate gratification. You have to build stuff. For me, I can just deploy it to a web server, and people can access it. And so throughout my career, I just build up a great base of business knowledge and how business is operated. And along with my base of technology that I was working as, I was able to kind of blend the two in my head and say, well, why are we selling like that? Why don't we do this? Why don't we, create an efficiency here and make people more effective over here? And that's what allowed me to become a CTO. On top of that, when you're CTO of a product company, you have to kind of be able to work with the CEO and understand their vision and what they want to build. And I was always good at listening. And so I was able to understand what they're saying, translate it to technical speak, and then communicate that to my team so that we could effectively execute a strategy.
Do you think you're on a career path to become a CTO, or just kind of like naturally happened?
It kind of naturally happened. I'm abrasive and pretty loud spoken. And so whenever there's a lead,
Bombastic is the word I think we're looking for.
bombastic's a word I would use. But I would always be the one trying to lead projects, being ambitious as well. And so I found myself in leadership positions on most of the projects I've been on, and that allowed me to uh, eventually get there. I don't know if it was ever my career path. I didn't wake up and say, I'm going to be a CTO. That's what I want to be when I grow up. It just kind of happened. You become like a lead developer and you're like, hey, wait a minute. I'm still not getting to call the shots I want to call. I think I should be lead architect or architect. You get architect and then you're like, this other guy's an idiot. So I'm going to be chief architect. Then you're chief architect and then all of a sudden you're CTO because chief architect leaves. Right. And so, you just, if you're ambitious, and you really, really want to lead, and you have an urge to lead, and you really feel reinvigorated by that, then you'll work your way up. Technology moves really fast, and so do positions in tech.
Let's touch on that. Like technology is moving so fast, but do you think that's one of the other? I mean, I would think that was one of the other misconceptions about being a CTO. I know all executive roles and I mean positions in general in software are very difficult, but how difficult it is for a CTO to kind of keep up with the pace. And, like how did you do that? And as you're growing, but then and when as you had a CTO role, just to keep up with the pace of technology.
I tinker a lot, since I always have business ideas. So the best part about always having business ideas is I'm constantly building product in my spare time. And so when I'm doing that, I'm always trying out new technology as I do it. So like I have a thing I'm working on that's running Kubernetes. I want to get a little more experience with the newer versions of Kubernetes. So I did that. But I also want to learn Go. So I picked up the Go manual and I started messing around with things in Go. And then someone turned me on to Elixir. So I have an Elixir product running somewhere. And then I'm like automating my life too. So I have more time to lead skip lists and do all the other things I'm interested in doing. So I also have been messing around with that. It's really just tinkering and the same way other people stay up on fast moving fields, you just have to play around with it. I call it immersing myself, right? I can't be a good decision maker unless I'm immersed in what my decisions mean. And so it's easy to say we're going to use JavaScript and we're going to use Mongo and we're going to use buzzword A, right? It's easy to read an article and see that, but it's much harder to immerse yourself and be around people that are calling you an idiot because you don't quite understand. And that's our field in general, but it's hard to do that. But I try to do that so that I really, really understand the underlying technology so I can make really good decisions for our clients. And also, if I ever become a CTO again, as a CTO, right? Because even though you're making decisions, your decisions affect people.
Yeah, man, I think that's a really interesting discussion. Well, I mean, so let's talk about you covered a lot of things like being a tinkerer and understanding like new technologies that are coming up, but I think it definitely depends on the role that you're in and the company and the size of the company. And obviously for a large company with the emerging technologies, every company needs to be digital. There's definitely a role there for a technology leader. Do startups need to have like a CTO or is like a VP of engineering, or what's the distinction there?
So I think people exist on a spectrum. Some people are introverted, some people are extroverted. Some people are really good at hacking things out. Some people like to move it nice and slow. And because we all have different personalities, that lends our skill sets and the way we act to different things. There are, of course, unicorns that can do both. They can manage people and be deeply technical. But those people are exceptionally rare. And finding someone that can do both, is just yeah, good luck. So what happens is you end up finding someone that's deeply technical who can help set a technology vision, drive it, really understand their decisions, really understand why they're making the decision, really immerse themselves in the technology, like I said. And then on the other opposite spectrum, you meet these people who are really good at getting people bought into ideas and can help lead them and manage them and help them grow and do all those beautiful things that a manager does. And that's why you end up with really two of them. And so you end up with a VP of engineering, someone that has a great skill set in helping people grow and keeping them interested and getting them motivated to work. And then you have someone that's a deep technical expert helping them, drive that vision and create it and really understand why we're doing what we're doing. Again, there are people that can do both, but those people are so rare that's better off, and you tend to see organizations go the direction of both and having both. Early stage startups, you'll see a CTO who manages 5 or 6 people and then tends to step aside and hire a VP of engineering so that that VP of engineering can manage. It's oftentimes you see the same thing happen to a CEO. So it's not, there's a great parallel here, right? So a CEO could be really good at the vision, really good at even managing people, but may not be able to do both or may not care to do both, right? They might be so dedicated on sales and vision that they hire a COO to handle all the other accounting and marketing and sales and all the stuff they don't want to do. Box.com did this, and it's a very, very common pattern. Stripe did it, Facebook did it. And so it's not uncommon to see it again on the business side. And CTOs, it happens as well.
Would you recommend CTOs kind of play to their strengths, or as they grow and become, they grow into the role, that they should get more generalized? What's your thoughts on that?
I believe in T-shaped people, right? I think if you don't know how to manage people and it's something that you really want to, you should learn it. You should learn how to manage people. I think managing people is one of the most rewarding things I do on a day-to-day basis. Helping people grow and seeing that growth is beautiful. And so I wouldn't want to give that up. Other people don't really care about that. And so they're not necessarily going to see the value in it. There's incredible value in life in staying in your own lane, right? And knowing what you're good at and knowing what you're bad at, hiring people to cover your blind spots and doing what you're good at. However, if you don't experiment and you don't try, how do you know what you're bad at, right? And so I think it's always wise to try and fail, realize if there's something I want to continue doing, meaning I'm going to get back up and brush myself off and keep going, or I'm better off delegating it to someone that would be better at it. And I don't really worry about this part. I'll have other things to experiment on and see if I'm good at.
Well, how do you balance it as a CEO, Skip Bliss? You have a technology background. I mean, if you think about a lot of the successful startups like Facebook, Zuckerberg was a developer. I'm blanking on a bunch of others, but they have to grow the company, but then they also are, building out the technology. I mean, they basically have to know everything, right? And they have to be good at all the different aspects, but also, keep playing to their strengths of being a technology leader as well. That can be challenging, I think.
Oh, absolutely. My job is incredibly challenging, but here's the beautiful part. I got you to do my marketing and sales and all that stuff that I'm not necessarily good at. I'm good at parts of it, of course. Like no one's bad at any holistic thing. Like, am I bad at sales? Well, I'm really bad at making sure contracts are signed, but you're good at that. And so if you hire people that complement your blind spots and the things that you're bad at, then it's not so difficult to have to do everything. So I don't have to do accounting. I just occasionally have to understand how budgeting works, right? And so I just do that part, and then the CFO handles the rest of it. And so if you're really good at understanding your blind spots, then you can hire for the people that optimize for what you're not good at. And you're going to have to do a lot, but you don't do as much as you think you have to do. And it's important, even a CTO, or if you're not good at managing people, understanding that you're going to have to manage somebody, because if the VP of engineering reports to you, you have to manage at least one person. And that means you're going to have to learn how to manage a little bit. You can hire someone to manage themselves, but that's a different topic. You're still going to have to do a little bit of management. So the important lesson here is you don't have to do everything your own. Zuckerberg had Sandberg, and she is awesome operating a company. That's evident. A lot of these tech people have great COOs. They have great people operating around them that have a lot more experience than them that help them out even though they have to ultimately make the decision, to help them inform them to make the best decision.
Well, then how does the CTO balance product and engineering?
That's a really interesting question. I You know when you're messing with a balanced product because it means engineering didn't win too much. If engineering wins too much, there's no features that ship. Everything is immaculate. There's a lot of testing. There's good infrastructure. Everything's redundant, and life's really good. Um, and you see that sometimes, and startups fail because of that. And if product wins too much, you're heavy on technical debt. The system is usually unstable over time. It's hard to make changes. You acquire lots and lots of technical debt. Um, go down the list. And so building a balanced organization where you're serving the needs of your customers via product, but also making sure engineering can stay up to date and making sure that they're investing in the right things for the long-term growth is important. And knowing how to balance those two things is an act. It's very easy to only serve your customers because they stop yelling at you up until they start yelling at you louder because you're breaking their stuff every day. And it's really easy to give in to the cries of engineers when you can't ship a feature because you can't get through a regression cycle. And so it's easier to make the hard decisions, say, you know what, we're going to invest in technical debt every 2 week sprint or however you work, and doing it that way and saying, you know what, no, product, you're getting 25 points. We can do 30 points a sprint. You get 25, engineering gets 5. Or engineering gets 10, product gets 20, right? And eventually there's a balance that gets achieved where you're continually shipping value for your customers, and the engineers are able to build a really great system that can scale and continue to work and isn't necessarily decaying over time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that it's like you shouldn't just be fully like an engineering organization, that product and having the product vision and understanding that group's needs and requirements are just as important as actually shipping the features. So it's good to make sure you're aware of that balance.
Of course. So I'll say this a way that most business people understand. Unit tests have no business value, none. Customers don't even know if you write tests. And if your customers do know you're writing tests, your code's public on GitHub and you're already done. So if the customers know you're writing tests, it's over. What they do feel though is features. And when features aren't shipping because you don't have enough tests, you don't go. So it's really when you quantify value, what value am I adding to my customers? How often am I adding value? It's important to look at the technology gains that you get and giving engineering time, create the right primitives and the things that you can build amazing features on is important as well for the future proofing of your product and your company. And so people often only look at the features. They don't look at everything because it doesn't seem visible to a customer. It doesn't seem like the customer can feel it, but it's the long-term feeling of getting a feature every week because you invested in tests and because you're able to keep your velocity up. That matters, right? It's like credit card debt, for example. When we talk about technical debt, same thing. Yeah, it's great if you can just go to Amazon and buy whatever you want, but eventually your credit card maxes out and you can stop buying things on Amazon. And now not only can you not buy things to make yourself feel better, you now have a massive credit card bill. So it's super important that you, like I said, the balance there. It has to be balanced. No one should be winning all the time in a technology organization. The CTO should be balancing that in their head, right? They should say, if you're getting a lot of product recently, I bet engineering is suffering. I better pull back a bit, and making sure you keep that balance between the two.
When you were CTO, how did you, or even today, how do you manage the technical debt? And like how do you approach it? How do you think about it? Because you're in a leadership role as opposed to a developer or a VP of engineering.
I think a lot of people sell technical debt as doom and gloom, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Oh, we're gonna die if we have technical debt. Like, are you? Maybe. I mean, you might. I've seen startups fail because of it.
And
But
name a
odds are
product that doesn't have technical debt.
there are none, right? Salesforce has it. Name your biggest company, and they have things that they'd be ashamed if you found out about. At the end of the day, how you balance this, you always tie technical debt back to business value. And business value is what the company is making value of, right? And say, hey, if we don't fix our debt, you're going to get less business value over time. And that could be features, that could be bug fixes, it could be really anything. And as long as you can tie back and put it in relatable terms to people, people will understand and they'll prioritize it. You're right, we can't afford to ship only 2 features. And if we continue shipping at this rate, by next month, we can only ship 2 features and we need to ship at least 3 features a month. Let the business make that decision. I told you months ago that we get to 1 feature a month if we didn't invest in technical debt. We're at 1 feature a month. I didn't lie to you. You're upset, but you chose not to invest, right? And so now if you invest this much, we can get back to 3 within 4 months, right? Because there's interest on technical debt. Sometimes it gets tangled up. It's very hard to fix. And so as long as you're communicating that, you're not communicating doom and gloom, you're communicating actuals. You're saying, this is what it is. This is how we can fix it or we cannot fix it, and let the team make the decision together. Because if you're on an executive team, it's important to know that it's a team. People respond better. The problem is most CTOs try to communicate it in technical terms. They don't tie it back to value. And because they don't do that, they don't get listened to until it's too late and everything's on fire. They tend to lose their jobs, to be honest.
You can be one of the first to download our podcast and read our latest articles each week by subscribing to the Thoughtful Software newsletter. Sign up today and receive a free copy of Andrew's ebook, Thoughtful Software Principles. This is a treasure trove of software wisdom you won't find anywhere else. In this free resource, Andrew dives into details on how to build really great software. You can go to skiplist.com to subscribe and we'll immediately send you a download link. That's skiplist.com. Now, back to the show.
Let's shift and talk about a topic that I really enjoy about what we do is really around helping non-technical and like non-software companies adopt software, adopt digital services. And I'm not talking about like SAP or Oracle. It's more like some of these new technologies like around machine learning, computer vision. What role do you see a CTO playing in like a non-technical and a non-software company? Like, what are some of the things that you'd want to advise them on, or how they should approach this new era that we're in?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is what I said earlier, understanding the business, talking to people, and finding out how to enable people with technology. That's the biggest thing, being CTO to everybody. And I think the next thing that you have to do is you have to understand technology will ever be a priority, right? Unless the investment is worth so much that people's jobs will be transformed because of it. For example, let's say I'm a $200 million business and I can save the business $50 million a year in operating if I just install this one thing. It never happens, but occasionally it does. And if that happens, then people will listen to you and prioritize it and hope you're not wrong if you act, because if you're wrong, you might get fired over it. And by understanding technology is not a priority, you can actually make yourself a priority. You can say, hey, listen, this is the business critical things that we need, and this is how I'd like to invest the money we have, and you'll be able to better prioritize your budget. And people will start seeing value in what you do. You'll never be a priority, though. It's just not going to happen. Do you think technology is a priority at Lowe's? No, it's not. Lumber is their priority, and supply chain is their priority. They're never going to be a technology firm wholly. And then lastly, I think the thing you can do is really help educate people. I think most people understand technology, but most people are digitally illiterate. They don't understand how computers work. They don't understand how web browsers work. They don't understand how phones work. Last night I was at a friend's house and they're like, oh, it's not on the internet, it's an app. And I'm like, how do you think that app works? Like, it's what? Like, that's how normal people think. They don't understand that the app uses the same web services that the browser uses to get the information onto the device, but they think the mobile apps are a completely different world. And they don't know that these things can talk to each other and that they do talk to each other. They think it's magic. And so helping your organization become technology and digitally literate can really move the needle and get people excited and build that ambitious technology vision that you have. And you do that by just saying, hey, this is what we could do. this is what the state of the art in technology is, that really moves the needle at a non-technology firm.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think one other thing that non-software companies should do is not try to do these big grand technology adoption. Like they have, like, I'm going to spend $5 billion over the next 2-3 years, and we're going to add all these services. Those tend to not turn out as successful. I don't think there's been many that have been successful, but maybe starting out with like some bite-sized POCs. We're going to try this, see if this works. Maybe like using some sort of new inventory management with computer vision, and let's kind of move incrementally forward. I think would be a good way to start, rather than kind of allocating a huge budget around technology.
Oh, absolutely. The more money you allocate, the more you're going to lose. I think it's important because it really does come down to, it's bigger than just the technology. You have to get people to adopt it. And change management is the hardest thing to do as an executive. If you have 30,000 people who need to adopt the technology, which isn't uncommon at a Fortune 500 company that has that many people, you have to convince every single one of them that's worth their time to invest to grow. Now, some of them you can just say, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to get fired. But you really only get 2 or 3 of those as a CEO. And so, really being considerate, managing change at organizations, it's powerful. It's hard. A lot of executives fail at it. But if you're going to be a good CTO, you have to be a master at change management, understanding where people are going to run into issues, mitigating them. There's a great book called Switch. They talk about the elephant and the rider. Everyone has a rider, which is the logical part of your brain, and then the elephant, and that's the emotional part of your brain. You can convince a rider to do a lot of things, and the rider might know the direction it wants to go, but you try telling an elephant where to go and get back to me on it. You really can't. It's a 2-ton beast that wants to do what it wants to do. And so helping people and helping that elephant move along and knowing how to do that, it's a core key tool in a CTO's toolkit that you can't not use it. If you don't use it, you will fail as a CTO. You have to change manage and you have to do it well.
Yeah, I like that reference. I've actually read that book. Very good book.
Yeah, great book.
What advice do you have for CEOs and CFOs, like other executive members, on how they should work with CTOs?
I think from a CFO's perspective is understanding that technology is expensive. I mean, it is. Developers are hella expensive and contractors are also expensive. And finding how to help the CTO budget better, right? Don't look at them as an enemy trying to spend all your money. Look at them as someone trying to build efficiencies and effectiveness in an organization. They're your friend, right? If you can get that person to help you build the efficiency and effectiveness, you won't have to lay people off and you'll operate better. And so CFO, just help them, right? They might not see how they might be able to spend their money, how they might be able to spread out the efficiency gains over maybe 3 years instead of 2 years, and all of that. And so work together to really understand that these are investments. Technology tends to be an investment, not a necessarily immediate gain, and working with them in that regard. A CEO, I think, really has to understand that while you're setting your vision, you have to be very meticulous in the details. Most CTOs tend to be engineers by background, and when they are, they tend to be detail oriented. And that detail orientedness, words matter. And so if you say something, you might loosely use a word, and then the CTO hears something different. And so I like to call it a domain specific language, a DSL, where all the executives are using the same words to communicate so that you have your own vocabulary, that you agreed that when you say foobar means foobar, and that's exactly what it means. Creating that means that you can communicate vision, which tends to be this fluffy, shapeless thing, in terms that everyone understands. You're able to talk more concretely without having lossy communication between two people. I think that is huge. And getting CTOs and CEOs to have that language moves the needle in a big way. And most companies that are big product companies create that vernacular over time. and they just out execute everybody because they're able to communicate vision in a more concrete way and move quicker as an executive team.
Yeah, I find that interesting. And I think one of the things that I've learned from you, and it's an interesting discussion we had some time back on how new software is. I mean, how young it is. It's not a very old industry. And so there's still a lot of learnings. There's still a lot that we need to do. And in general, yeah, it is going to be expensive. So, executives, other team members who may not understand technology need to be prepared to, go through some iterations and make the investments to, incorporate new technology or prepare yourself for the next generation of companies. And like, if you're rolling out SAP, it's kind of common knowledge that it's going to take a year or 2 years and millions of dollars to roll it out. So it's kind of the same thing as you're thinking about new technology. And, people just need to generally understand that.
It's crazy. When engineers talk about architecture, they talk about components in a system. And good architecture, as I mentioned earlier on this podcast, is about business enablement, enabling, these components can be tied together. We can release features faster because we're able to compose these modules into something that's meaningful, a composition. And so business is the same way. When you extract outwards, right, from a single system and the architecture in that system, and you look at the architecture of a company, the more systems you invest in, you have more systems you can integrate in, right? That's efficiency gain, right? And when you're making technology, it's always an investment. You're building your company's platform, if you will. And these APIs and this access to this data and this data collection, all of that enables you to do something else. And the more systems you have and the more access you have to data and all of that continues to develop this beautiful company architecture, or soon you enable yourself to potentially do data analytics or data pipelining or AI or compose systems together to make rich automations that help automate entire processes, entire teams away at companies. And if you look at it that way, imagine you invest $30 million into 8 systems, and then you can compose them together for another 3 million, but you can get rid of a $20 million team. You pay back the entire investment in 2 years. And if you look at it that way, and you have a good visionary at the top of your organization, a CIO or CTO helping you navigate, it can pay dividends. You can save millions of dollars from small investments. So technology is expensive, but boy, is it even more expensive not to invest. People don't see that, but they should start seeing it.
Yeah, I love that. I think let's wrap up on one thing here that I'm curious from your perspective and over time. What are some of the CTOs and technology leaders that you admire, and what do you admire about them?
I have a lot of people that I admire. Try not to speak specifically about people on our podcast unless that's the theme of the podcast. So I'll keep high level, and the people that are listening that I keep their name out of my
You
mouth.
think Elon Musk is listening? I think he is.
I think so. I'd like to think Elon Musk listens to us before he goes to bed every night. Um, the everybody has traits you can really respect, and you have to watch and look and see. Some people have more obvious traits than others, so sometimes you have to look a little harder at some people. But there's one technology leader I really respect because his passion for technology is just leads him to interesting corners and him to continue to drive and understand technology. And he loves to bring new technologies to his firm, and he's not afraid of technology. And he works at a talent agency. We all know who I'm talking about at this point, because if you listen to this podcast, you know who this person is. We've named them before. But this person just pursues things, and he's not full of fear. And so many people have fear of technology, like, oh, it's scary, or I should quit. And this guy doesn't. And that's respectable. Being in the field as long as he has and not being afraid of technology is a feat of strength and willpower. And it's hugely respectable. So many CIOs, CTOs become afraid of technology. They become conservative. And that becomes death in a field that moves so quick. Another leader I really respect is someone that really immerses himself in his team. He has like 3,000 people reporting to him, and he still finds time to code to this day. Every Friday afternoon, he tells his assistant, block my calendar off, I'm coding. And he might not code anything on their platform. In fact, he gets yelled at regularly by his VP. I've been there for it. It's hilarious, but you know, he doesn't think so, but I think it's hilarious. But he still finds time to immerse himself so he can make good decisions. And I think that's super honorable, and it shows respect to his team. And I think his team knows that. Like, this is me making better decisions for you. And the third person that I really respect is, it was a CTO I worked with a while back. And the way he managed was so methodical. It was crazy, but he always managed people to make good decisions. But he always let people make their own decisions. And he had this way of working that people would arrive at the decision he would have made anyways. And he just knew how to ask questions in a way that was insanely leading without being leading at all. And I don't know how to explain it, because to this day I have been processing and trying to understand, because that's how much I respect the skill. The guy built $1 billion, he is a billionaire, but a multi-billion-dollar company on this skill. And he was in the same technology. He had a PhD from Stanford and just an insanely good guy at technology. But his ability to lead people while being that good at technology has stuck with me my entire career. And I when people say you can't do both, I say, no, I know a guy who did both. And because I know a guy who did both, you're not going to tell me, right? You're not going to tell me the sky's the limit when we've been to the goddamn moon. And so I've seen the moon here. And so I that's why I strive to be a person that can manage people as well as he did, still being good at technology and still helping people build good solutions. And so those are 3 examples of people I really respect. But like I said, I respect a lot of people. And if you look, you can respect, there's always respectable things about people. But those 3 traits alone, I think, are impressive and, worth noting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I thought you would name drop like Satya or Elon or something like that. So that was great that you kind of made it more personal.
Yeah, I mean, those are people that everyone can look to. I mean, Satya is really good at his nonviolent communication and listening and so many cool things. And Elon's good at being like a complete fucking tax driver and being like mono focused. Like that kind of tunnel vision's crazy to me. But I mean, everyone can read about those. So I like to share from my personal experience. One of those people I think has a book, so you can read about him. Maybe that book may not be released yet.
They're actually like CEOs though, so they're not. I wouldn't consider them CTOs at this point.
Yeah, well, that's that too. That too. I think
Yeah.
hell on my CTO title. Running public.
Well, I think this was a cool and an interesting kind of discussion to get your insight on, your background, and just I think a role that both of us agree is tremendously important. So hopefully people got just the kind of some quick thoughts on, what it takes to be a great CTO. I mean, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts.
My closing thought is that being a technology leader doesn't have to mean you have chief in your title. It doesn't have to mean that you lead a massive team of people to victory. Being a technology leader can be as simple as being passionate about technology, showing up to work every day, and showing people what technology can do. And great CTOs make people passionate about technology. They win champions and they win people. I call them technology warriors within a business. The people that fight for your stuff for you. And anyone can do that. Anyone can be a thought leader if you're willing to take a risk, if you're willing to learn more and immerse yourself. And you shouldn't hold back because you don't have chief in your title. Technology is everyone's responsibility at a company, and so is innovation, right? Innovation doesn't start because someone has innovation in their title. It starts at making everyone interested in creating a better environment. And if you can do that, if you, as a CTO, you can get everyone excited about technology, then they'll do your job for you. You don't have to do anything. People will bring the ideas to you. And then you just become chief executing officer, and you're just executing everyone else's ideas. So you don't have to be exceptionally clever or visionary or anything like that. You just have to get people excited about technology. You do that and you're going to win.
I think it's a great place to end. Thanks, man. Thanks for listening. You can always connect with us at skiplist.com.